Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Discover Movies. And today we are going to be talking about the new movie, Abigail. Now, it is considered a horror thriller that was released this year, and me and Anthony watched it the other day, and we want to share our opinions and thoughts on this movie. So, let's get started with some basics. Now, it is from directors Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett. And those two guys were directors of the recent Scream movies. And so many of you are very familiar with those. And so their new endeavor is Abigail. And starring Melissa Barrera and Dan Stevens and Alicia Weir as the titular character Abigail. I thought this movie ended up being quite average, unfortunately, which we're going to get into. But we both felt kind of the same about this movie. So at least we're going to agree on some things. And so for me personally, I thought this movie had great potential. It started out with a great premise about a group of people capturing the Abigail character and putting her up for ransom. And that's as much as I'm going to go into. If you haven't seen the movie, we do recommend seeing it for its kind of unique approach to this kind of genre. But as we're going to go to at the end, the movie does fall apart quite fast at the end of the movie. And the ending did need some work. So if you guys haven't seen the movie, we're going to give you our grades here and a brief description of why, and then we're going to go into spoilers. So, I gave this movie a C, which on our grading scale is an average movie. This movie ended up, unfortunately, being an average movie because of its ending. I was at a good B plus for a good 2/3 of it. That's how hard the ending dropped it for me. How about you, Anthony?
Sadly, the same. Interesting premise. Definitely my type of movie. Liked how it was going with the acting.
It was your movie pick.
It was. It was my pick that day. And it was like the last 20, 30 minutes. It just got really annoying and just fell apart. Also, gave it a C. Would have given it a lot higher if not for the ending.
All right. So, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, this is where you click off. Thank you for your watch time. And now for everyone else, let's go into spoilers. Okay, for those of you who stuck around, let's get more into the nitty gritty of this movie. So, this movie follows 6 kidnappers who kidnap the titular character Abigail. These are Joey, Frank, Rickles, Sammy, Peter, and Dean. And each of them have kind of semi-unique backstories, not really. And we get introduced to them Suicide Squad style, where our main character Joey kind of reads people well and just kind of goes on a tear on guessing who these people were. Right, so Joey herself, we find out, is a recovering drug addict, where she has not chewing gum, a hard candy. What do you want to call it? Like a addiction.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good enough. We learn that Frank was a former detective / cop. We learn Rickles was former Marines.
Yeah.
I believe it was Marines. Yes. So former military. Sammy is a hacker girl who comes from money. Peter is basically a beef or a brawn for hire, kind of like a bodyguard stereotype.
Was bullied, now is a bully.
Yes. Classic. And then Dean being your retarded good getaway driver. You have anything more to add about Dean? He was spoiler alert, he was the first one killed, so you kind of get the least about him.
Like, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say retarded. He's kind of just
retarded might
he's
be
the idiot there.
Yeah.
Which was also pointed out that like he's good at what he does, but he's clearly not the best. They kind of just went with a guy in town, at least from what we're led to believe in the beginning.
He's kind of shown to be a little bit of a womanizer, thinking all the women are after him. He goes after especially Sammy's character, played by Catherine Newton.
Yeah, definitely the most annoying character.
Yes. All right. So we have discussed that we do like this build-up. Now, for me personally, I know I like this less. I'm not always a huge fan of a big character trait dump, basically, which is what this scene ended up being, where Joey just goes around and tells the audience. They used her as a plot device to inform the audience of everyone's backstories. Instead of kind of naturally, organically through the movie, through their actions kind of telling us what they did in the past life, which is how I prefer to be introduced to the characters. But they didn't do this bad. I've seen other movies do this style much worse. Suicide Squad, unfortunately. I'm talking about the original one. And so, what are your kind of positives about the beginning of the movie that made you like it until it kind of fell apart at the end, which we'll discuss in a little bit?
I think they did the kidnapping well. How they originally had it set was interesting in how they pulled it off. As far as like the character dump, I'm good with that. I read and watch a lot that does like big like character dumps or lore dumps, so I kind of just like that aspect. It was kind of weird at parts, but that's kind of just this movie, that it just gets kind of weird at parts.
Yeah. So just to speed through the plot a little bit, so they kidnap Abigail, who's a 12-year-old girl. We see that she's a ballerina, a dancer. They kidnap her from her home. They take her to a big mansion to keep her hostage for a ransom. They want a exorbitant amount of money, millions of dollars, because the father is apparently a wealthy man. And so they, put two and two together. He wants his daughter, give her money, And so, of course, the big twist of this movie is that Abigail, who is the little girl, turns out to not be just some ordinary little girl. She turns out to be this ancient vampire. And so little do they know, it's the classic, the trappers become the trapped. So instead of her being trapped in with them, they are trapped with a murderous vampire. And so she, as we mentioned before, she knocks off Dean first. He goes down investigating a noise in like this like kitchen celery kind of area and gets chopped head off, just gone. Just it looked like an animal brutally ripped it off. And so she slowly starts playing with her food. And so basically she just toys with them, which is a series of jump scares and different fight scenes that end up non-lethal most of the time. Like there was that one scene where they find her in the bedroom when she's doing like this ballerina act and she stabs one in the leg and she Swiss cheeses the Peter with his crucifix that he wears on his neck.
I mean, the kills were... There were some interesting ones, how it slowly progressed. She has made very apparent multiple times she very much enjoys playing with her food. So it does, prolong how it goes, but...
Almost too much, which we'll see at the end.
Yeah. The fight scenes, they were interesting. Kind of shows the characters are really stupid, to be honest. But most of them, clearly this was not going to work. But I thought how they progressed it was interesting. I liked the order of how they were, like, picking them off and how they did it. I think that was done well.
Okay. So around here, we get to see how she kind of manipulates people. So she bites the character Sammy, and so she slowly turns, but she doesn't, like she turns into a vampire, but she more turns into Abigail's underling, that Abigail is able to remotely control, who then she, traps Peter into a back room, basically like a back botanical garden-ish looking room, and kills him through Abigail.
Yeah, she turns her into her soul.
Okay, and so from that, we lead to basically... So we turn to, like, the stereotype of, like, vampires where they're afraid of, or not afraid of, but allergic to sunlight, let's say. It kills them. So then they get into the library area where we have tons of sunlight, and they feel like that they're safe for now from Abigail.
So, in the library, Abigail tries to have Sammy also kill them. We see Sammy blow up, because instead of bursting into flames in this one, they just blow up.
To a bunch of blood and limbs and flesh.
It was done alright.
It's done decently.
I've seen worse, I've seen better. Frank and Joey are the only two left alive at this point. They find a secret room, and it turns out Lambert, the guy that brought them there, is also a vampire, and he was turned like 100-something years ago, and his whole job is just to bring people to Abigail to die. So he offers Frank, I'll turn you, we'll kill Abigail, and when her father gets here, we'll kill her, take over the whole thing. Frank gets turned, kills Lambert, and at least from here is when it really kind of starts getting off the rails.
Yeah, so it's now from here and like the next 30 minutes or so is Frank, Joey, and Abigail fighting it out.
If you call it a fight, really.
Yeah.
There wasn't much of a fight for the majority of this.
Yes.
It was really just Frank beating their asses. Like, he dropped Abigail at least twice.
Yes.
Before they finish off Frank, and it just
So
every decision was weird.
Yeah, so right before the end battle, we have had this kind of buried storyline throughout this whole movie that Joey's character was a bad mother, and because she was an addict, she abandoned her son. And Frank, throughout this movie, loved to like stab her with that emotional needle to get her to do something. And so here she gets her phone back and leaves a voicemail on her son's phone, I guess, saying how much she loves him and stuff like that. We're supposed to feel something here for her because she's trying to reform as a mother. I just kind of wanted to watch Frank kill everybody instead. So, because we have a big battle where Abigail tries to stop Frank and Frank basically incapacitates her. So now Frank is coming after Joey. And so we have this big break in this action for her to have this emotional moment with an answering machine. I didn't feel much from it. Again, this is where it's a vampire movie of vampires killing people. It's not. I didn't give a crap. Really didn't. And so, sorry, do you have any comments on that plot point?
No, like they cut back a bit, I think, between her making the call and Frank kind of just draining Abigail's blood.
Yes.
But like you said, it kind of goes to the point of I feel like this movie just had missing scenes that would have made more sense. Like, there's a scene early where Rickles is talking to Joey about how they can only trust each other. And, I don't trust any of these people here, but I trust you. But it's like, you're all strangers. You have no reason to trust any of them.
Correct.
And it felt like they were going to know each other before or something. And it just feels like there's some missing scenes in this movie that would have, like, further explained, okay, we're going to feel something, like, with her and her child. Or we're going to explain why these people actually trust each other. Or even why Frank wants to either kill or enslave Joey. Like, there was one scene early on that there was a conflict between them, and that's it. But
yeah, the rest of the movie they were kind of amicable. They kind of agreed on the decisions. Besides the main one of not leaving immediately. That was the only one that they really fought on, and that was it.
Because, like we said, Abigail plays with the food. She convinced them that the reason they're all here is because Frank set them up.
Yeah.
And she toys with them multiple times throughout this movie.
Yeah.
But outside of that one scene where she's like pointing a gun at Frank, and then it all gets dealt with, they, like you said, they kind of agree on everything. They agree, all right, we can't get out of here. We are literally trapped. They barricaded all the doors. There was no reason, really, outside of that one scene for him to act the way he did towards the end. Just some, like, 2 or 3 missing scenes I feel like would have explained a lot.
It's funny because this movie is an hour and 49 minutes. It's not like your standard hour and a half or less horror movie. It does have an additional, like, 20 minutes on it. And to feel like there was even more cut out, I wonder if, either it was or it was just shoddy writing. I don't know. We will never know until probably many years if this even matters. Because Abigail, has a 6.7 currently on IMDb, which is okay. I've seen much worse, right? Like we said, we gave it a C. It's a pretty average movie, all intents and purposes, because of what we're about to get to. So, as he mentioned, Frank tries to drain Abigail's blood, and always right at the end, something happens. Either Joey tackles him and he's not able to finish the job, or he stops because he thinks that's going to allow him to have Abigail as also his underling. And there was a big scene where he drains Joey, and he expects that to make her his underling.
The first time, I think it was just ignorance.
Probably.
He's like, all right, I drained her. This is going to be enough. She ain't coming back. The third time, though, that was bad.
Yes, this happens multiple times. And every time, someone always comes back to tackle him or to hit him or something. Like, I remember one was Abigail saying, you got to work for 100 fucking years to get to the cool stuff or something like that was the quote.
Yeah, when he tried to make Joey into a thrall.
Yeah.
And she went along with it to try and get him, which didn't work, but he just thought he could do it all.
Which, okay, if you want to pull that.
I mean, it's kind of a common trope. The older the vampire, the cooler shit you get to do.
Yeah, like I said, okay, right? But the amount of times like Joey came back to life, Abigail came back to life, or wasn't dead, or was just laying there waiting for their turn to come back up in their on their script. You know, the amount of times even Frank came back, even though Frank came back the least, because he was kind of like hit, and then poof.
I'll say, I think, I don't know if they're just making it like a vampire thing, but like the second Frank got turned, he very much started playing with his food as well. Like multiple times he could have ended it, and he was just playing with them. And I don't get why. I don't know if it's like a vampire thing in the universe, if it's just writing. They're like, all right, let's just make them all play with their food, but it was weird.
Yeah, because I don't know what their intention was on making that happen all the time, it makes me want to believe that it's padding the time. Like, it really did lengthen this movie significantly, this ending. And it made it feel longer than an hour and 49 minutes, unfortunately. And what made it worse is because the pacing for everything before Frank gets turned was quite great. Like, none of the times really dragged. I didn't feel like, okay, let's move. I never felt that. And then the last 30 minutes felt like another hour. And that's why it brought us down so much. And I think it was to its detriment that it was so good to be so bad. Now, if it was like all kind of middling, like the ending wouldn't be as disappointing. That it ended up being. And so, yeah, at the end, you know, Abigail prevails and her father's coming, and her father comes, who also is a vampire, who is teased to be Dracula, which is not called Dracula.
Yeah, he says something like, I've been known by many names throughout the years, hinting that a lot of like famous old vampires was probably just him.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, to be fair, I guess it makes sense he was a vampire. We were told he was coming a while back from Lambert, so
yeah,
I think they could have used him a bit better, especially since he is at least a known actor to people. So
yeah,
they could have actually used the father a lot better.
yeah. He was played by Matthew Good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, I think that was a detriment.
Well, yeah, he was in the movie for like what, 3 minutes, if that.
Yeah.
Like, he literally just shows up at the end. Abigail pleads that he spares Joey's life because Joey saved Abigail's life. And then he's like, okay, you get out of here, you rascal, before we eat you. It was such a nonchalant, flippant thing. And then she gets into the van with the keys in it, by the way. Just the keys were magically in it. But I guess the guy was kind of dumb enough to leave the keys in Dean.
I mean,
yeah.
At the very least, it's a house in the middle of nowhere.
That's true.
You shouldn't have to be concerned about getting robbed, especially if this is like a criminal hideout.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's true. And then the movie ends. So, your inputs on kind of that ending with the father and stuff?
I thought the father was going to do more, especially because a lot during the movie there was talk of he doesn't really care about Abigail. You know, he doesn't care about a lot of things. So there were so many ways I thought they were going to utilize the father, and this movie was going to end. And then just none of it happened. Like, the father could have not been there at all, and the movie would have been exactly the same almost. Frank dies. Abigail lets Joey go. That's it. The father literally did nothing.
Yeah, and it was so weird. It was like, and you could even remove that plot point of the father not caring about Abigail, because that came up nothing. It was like maybe one line at the end. It was one line where she was like, I know you don't care about me, and I know you just stuck me here, but, like, so you gotta listen to me and save her. I'm like,
No.
If he cared about you, you know, like, if your relationship with your father was never put into question or even mentioned, the audience would have, you know, like, okay, her father's coming because he cares about his daughter or his other vampire, and, like, okay, he comes, she pleads with him to save her. Everything would have happened the same.
Yep.
If he didn't come, everything would happen the same. Abigail could have just let Joey go, and she continues doing what she's doing at this mansion. Like, and now just minus Lambert, because Lambert's dead.
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of surprised the father existed. There was so Abigail, like we said, she plays with the food, and one of the points early in the movie is there is a very dangerous hitman called Vasquez that they all think he's in the house. I think Abigail even mentions like he might be there before.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I could be wrong on that, but it's then revealed Abigail's doing the killings. She's Vasquez. So for a long part of the movie, I honestly just thought the father was another like lie. Like, yeah, no, Christoph Lazar doesn't actually exist. It's just Abigail controlling shit. And honestly, he literally did nothing.
Yeah.
They could have had him part of the fight. They could have had him save Abigail. Hell, Abigail and Joey could have died, and he could have offered Frank a job to just drive home the point he didn't care about his daughter. He just cares about the power. Like,
Yeah.
so many things they could have done with the father, and he just showed up, wanted to eat her, had one supposed to be like emotional moment with Abigail, and then bye, Joey.
Yeah,
That's
it wasn't executed well. I really do feel it felt not only rushed and padded and underwritten. There was just so many things about it that makes me question how someone approved like editing, production at any point. Be like, doesn't this feel a little
Yep.
a little sour, a little anticlimactic? And that is kind of where we land with this movie. It has a lot of great buildup with no great payoff. Actually, a pretty subpar payoff. And we've seen many other movies just do this better. Like we can even like go to like the Wednesday show, the TV show, right? It had all this build up to this big baddie come back to life, and but they all added to the fight, which is what we could have had another one here. We could have had another like the father vampire coming in with his even more powerful powers and add another cool element into this. And ultimately, they decided to go the safe route. They tried to be a little emotional about it, and it ended up just being derivative of a lot of other kind of lower budget horror movies that we've seen.
not even just horror. It's honestly kind of thinking on it. There's some parallels to the Hateful Eight. People trapped somewhere, they can't go, they can't leave, and they're slowly getting picked off.
Yeah, and like what's sad is I know you especially, you really like Radio Silence Productions movies. And so for them to, especially well known to you, which is part of the reason why you did pick this movie because of that production company and, and the main actress and stuff like that, for them to, kind of drop the ball so, late into the movie was again another disappointment.
And kind of a surprise considering like Screams didn't drop the ball.
Same guys.
I don't think Ready or Not dropped the ball. It's the same studio. Like,
yeah,
it's kind of weird that they just dropped the ball on this one at the end.
Any more thoughts?
No.
Okay.
It was a good movie until the end, which just made it all right. It made an average movie, sadly.
All right. And to recap, C's from both of us here, which in our grading scale is an average movie. Tell us what you guys thought about Abigail in the comments below. We are very interested to start a discussion with you, and we're very interested to see what you guys think about this movie. So, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe button to be notified when our next video is released. And the like button really does help us out, get more people's eyes on this video. And as always, see you in the next video. Bye-bye.